So there's so much to get through. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So tell everybody what you just did and your new.
Yeah, so we just got back from Chile where we were in the Atacama Desert and my friend Scott and I, fellow Chaski OG, were there for about 3 weeks and it culminated with a successful record attempt at the fastest known time, both climbing and descending Ojos del Salado volcano, which is the second tallest mountain in the Western Hemisphere. So it's 22,600 feet, and we did it in 9 hours and 29 minutes, taking about 12 hours off of the previous record time. So it was definitely one of those dreams come true kind of days. It was a really, really big day and a lot of fun, a lot to talk about for sure.
Absolutely. And again, congratulations. We're all so proud of you. We watched it happen.
Thanks, man.
Unbelievable. An unbelievable accomplishment. Definitely challenging. It's the highest volcano in the world, I saw.
Yep,
Amazing.
true.
And then, yeah, so the previous FKT was just in 2019, and
hmm
the two FKTs that were involved that you smashed with this thing. So if you could talk a little bit about the segment within the segment that you took down.
Yeah, sure. So, FKT's fastest known times for people who aren't familiar with the vocabulary are kind of like unofficial records that are kept on routes where maybe there isn't an actual race, but people try to kind of compete against each other, and they've become really popular in 2020 and into 2021 because of the lack of races. So you've seen a lot of really, really competitive routes happening. And yeah, so this mountain had two FKTs that were recorded. The longer one was the one I was most interested in. It was the one that I thought really kind of was best suited to my wheelhouse because it was really more like a run, then climb, then run route. So it was about 55K, 33 miles in total, and started at the very lowest camp, basically on the side of the highway, kind of the entrance to where people go to climb this mountain. And the first 12K, or excuse me, 12 miles, 20K, were very, very runnable, which is kind of that's my strong suit because I come from a track and field background, marathon background, and climbed the route started high. It started at 15,000 feet. It climbed that first piece up to, I think, about 18,000 feet at base camp. And then, obviously climbs to the summit and then all the way back down. And so that's the big record. That's the record that I was targeting the whole time. And when I got out there, I was doing a bunch of, training trips on other mountains and stuff and seeing kind of how quickly I was going up. And I thought, if I have a really, really good day, I might actually be able to get the shorter, quicker record, which is from base camp to the summit and back. So that's basically just the climb piece of the run, climb, run. So it was definitely kind of like something that was in the back of my mind. And even during the FKT day, I wasn't 100% sure if I'd gotten it because I was kind of like trying to keep track of splits on my watch. And obviously, when you're really in it, it's hard to do arithmetic like that, especially at 20,000 feet. But I ended up getting under that both marks. So I think the old mark was 5 hours and 54 minutes from base camp to summit to base camp, and then 21 hours from for the big one, and I think it was 9:29 for the big route and like 5:32 for the interior, the shorter route. So yeah, it was a tight squeeze there, but I just felt really, really good. It was one of those days where everything kind of clicks. Like my altitude acclimatization was really, really good. I had an amazing crew with me. So everything just went really well, and that's what we needed for that to happen.
Extraordinary too. And also, like, not to skip on the shorter segment as well, is the previous FKT for it was by a guy who hadn't done what you'd already been doing.
Yeah, yeah. So and that's, obviously why it's harder to get those short segments in a longer segment because, obviously you're perfectly fresh when you can, just start at base camp and just, do your whole thing. And, if you're only out for 5 hours, it's a lot easier than being out for 9 hours. So you can expend a lot more energy in that time. So yeah, it was definitely a very special day to be able to tag both of those in one go. We kind of knew that would be like an A plus day if that happened, and we were lucky that it did.
100%, man. Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's really great seeing what you back up a little bit. I remember like we had been talking leading up to Project Carbon X to a little bit, and you're saying, I'm thinking about doing this volcano thing a little bit, but then I read what you sent me and everything, and you'd been eyeing this for a while. Like you used the word
Mhm.
quite a bit. When did you first hear about this FKT? What made you want to do it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It was definitely sometime in the fall. And I think that maybe it's like a grass is always greener thing, but like whenever I'm like training really hard on like road stuff, which is what Project Carbon X was, doing a lot of just like grinding long flat road runs, my mind kind of daydreams to the mountains a little bit. And sometimes I'm just like browsing the FKT website and boards and like looking at what's there, and especially in South America, because it's kind of my stomping grounds down here. And I remember just finding this route, and I was like, oh, 55K, like that's cool. It's like an ultra distance, and it's like really long, and it's looks super grindy. And I've always been someone who's done pretty well with altitude. Like I've been up before this, I had been up to like 6450 meters, which is like 21,000 feet, just about. But just like kind of mountaineering, hiking, climbing, that kind of stuff, never kind of combining it with running in this way. But I'd always done really, really well at altitude, and between just like, coming here to train for road running, or even just going up into the mountains for fun. So I always kind of wanted to just test myself in, you know, 2021, 2020. It's like this is the year to kind of just like try weird stuff and see how it goes. So that, it definitely like planted a seed, just like daydreaming. And I kind of started talking to all my friends about it. Like I remember talking to Jim about it a lot and being like, yeah, this is big mountain in Chile I want to do. And he was like, okay, whatever, man. That sounds crazy. And then, it just kind of like came to fruition over a couple of months, where I knew I was going to spend my winter and spring here in South America in the Andes training. It's something I've done a lot before. And I think it's really valuable for me as an athlete and a person to kind of be able to switch gears from something like Project Carbon X and then have something else like completely different. I think it's really good stimulus for the body to go from, just a ton of grinding on the roads, running, to, a ton of altitude, a ton of hiking, really, really big long days out. And that's what I was doing in prep for this. So I felt like if I had tried to go and do like another road ultra a month after Project Carbon X, it would not have gone well. I wouldn't have been like psyched about it. I wouldn't have been motivated. But because it was something completely different, I think it just like I had this like fire kind of bug in me. Like I remember even the week after Project Carbon X, I dropped out. I only made it 60K or something, and I was pretty wrecked. But I was like already doing like some like power hiking workouts on the treadmill and stuff to like kind of get ready. I was just, and it was so different. It was like those workouts were hard, but they were such a different stimulus that I found like my body was able to just like kind of hop right into it. Whereas usually if I would do a really hard ultra, it might take me a few weeks to kind of get back into it. Here it was just like, all right, right, within a few days, as soon as I was healthy enough to to hike and jog a little bit, I was like, all right, let's do it. And obviously those few weeks paid off, and it was a really quick turnaround at the end of the day. It was like 30 days or something between Project Carbon X and the FKT.
Yeah. Okay. So how long was that transition? Because so we had the race, and then you just did you take any time off between?
Yeah, I definitely took a few days off. I was really pretty beat up. My quads were pretty beat. I think I think like the week after Project Carbon X, I think I only did one run. I don't think I really did any running until I got to keto. I think I did one run, and it took me about a week to get to keto because I was in Massachusetts. So yeah, I basically had a week off, but I was probably still doing a lot of walking and stuff, because I saw a lot of people. I was at home for a bit, and walking was like one of the few kind of safe ways that I could socialize. So I was on my feet a fair amount, but definitely didn't do much running and no structured training at all until about a week after the race. And then, at that point I had 3 weeks, and really the focus was on altitude. Like we knew that was the big thing. And, I saw Sean posted a question about like, how did we take so much time off? And I think a huge part of that was just that I was really well acclimated. As soon as we got to keto's at 9,000 feet. like I think it was literally the first day we got here. There's a cable car that you can take up to the side of the city, to the mountains in the side of the city that's at about 13,000 feet maybe. And there's like a little cafe and stuff up there. It's open air and there's Wi-Fi and stuff. And my friend Scott and I, we just went up there and we just did work for like 8 hours. We just like had a work day up there, and it's like we would like go for a walk up a little bit more up the mountain and stuff to break it up. But it's like we would just go up there and sit and just like breathe the thin air, and then come back down to 9,000 feet and sleep. And even in that first week, we went up Cotopaxi volcano here in Ecuador, which is almost 20,000 feet, I think. And that was a really good day. And then like as soon as we got to Chile, it was like we never went below 13,000 feet. Like our base camp where we spent all of our time was 13,000, and then we would do kind of the climb high, sleep low. So we would go hit like 6,000 meter peaks, and like as like a day trip, which is crazy that you can do that, but the mountains are so accessible there that we literally go up to 6,000 meters, like drive there at 4 in the morning, do the whole climb, be out for 12 hours, drive back, sleep at 13,000, recover really well, and then we just do it again the next day. Like there were even days where we're like, I would do like a 5,000 meter peak in the morning, and then Scott and I would go do another 5,000 meter peak in the afternoon. Because like the other crazy thing about this is like Scott's in school, like he's getting his master's, so he's like literally doing Zoom classes like from our tent, like at this crazy lake at 13,000 feet with flamingos in it. And then it's like as soon as he's done with class, like all right, let's go hit the mountain. We got 5 hours of daylight left, and we'd go tag a 5,000 meter summit and be back in time for dinner. So it's like we just really focused on the altitude and just getting up as high as we could, but making sure that we were recovering between those days, which I think is super, super important.
Yeah. No, what an adventure, man. And what like where you can do that kind of thing and still do your work in class and all that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
back up a little bit. So I think you had like, let's see, you had, one FK according to the site, five in 2020 and two already in 2021. And you kind of spoke to the variety that you find like racing, like that. There's a lot of debate about, what FKTs mean to different people. I'm wondering what FKTs mean to
Um, I think FKTs embody a lot of what I like about the sport, which is the quantifiable ability to compare yourself both to yourself and to other people. Um, I think that road running and track and field have a lot of that too. It's such a numerical sport. I mean, going all the way back to like high school, that's one of the things that, as a very numerically minded person, like that was one of the things that I kind of fell in love with the sport was like, okay, I ran 20 minutes in the 5K 3 weeks ago, and now I'm running 19 minutes, and and then 2 weeks later I'm running 18 minutes, and it's like it's very quantifiable. It's very easy to see your progress, and I think FKTs are kind of similar, where it's like this very pure form of that, where you can just go out and say, okay, I ran up this particular route in this time, and I can compare that to other runners, and I can compare it to myself. And it's kind of it's like Strava segments. It's like the same reason that people really like Strava segments is they like having their little local rivalries, or they like competing on segments that are really really competitive. Where people all over the world might be doing like Grand Canyon or something like that, where people from all over the world will come and run the Cowboy Loop or something. So I think it's really really cool to have something like that, where it feels very pure. It feels very simple. Like there's no race, there's no starting line, there's no hoopla, there's no race expo, whatever. It's just like you go out and do your thing, and that's it. And so I think there's kind of a beauty in the simplicity of it that I really like. I also really like, I'm also a control freak, so I love the ability to be able to like, okay, like we said we were going to start at 4 a.m. We're going to start at 4:17 because we weren't ready, and it's like we wanted to double check some stuff, like so that kind of thing. Being able to like say, okay, we're going to go on this date, but we have a backup date if the weather's really bad. Like all that stuff really appeals to me as someone who really likes to kind of fine tune the details of stuff to kind of make sure that I'm controlling as much as I can to get the most out of myself on the day, because especially when you talk about big mountains or things like that, like the conditions matter so much. So I think that's another part of it that I really like, is just the ability to really have it be your event. Whether that's you and a big crew and people supporting you, or, like when I did Everest, it's like completely unsupported. It's like you just go out and do it, and no one even knows you're doing it, half the time. So I think that's the beauty of it, is it can be something that's, big and public and, supported, and there's all these people, or it can just be this super solitary, like you're just out there doing your thing. And I think there's a time and place for both of those. And it's something, especially this year and in the last year or so, where there hasn't been much going on competition wise, that I've really appreciated, is that whole culture. And that's a big part of why I've been trying to do more of it.
100%. Yeah, no, I love it too. I love watching it. I love seeing it. And again, to back up a little bit, so, I saw Project Carbon X2. So many of us did. Read your recap of it. It was what it was, and you are very clear-eyed about what it was. I'm wondering, from that experience, like what came with you through the mountains, and what did you carry with you, fitness, all that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Carbon X2 was a road 100K world record attempt, for those of you guys who don't know.
I
And I spent most of the second half of 2020 kind of thinking about that race and building up towards that race. And I was in Flagstaff, Arizona, training with Jim Walmsley, who's the best ultra runner in the world, I would say. And I learned an enormous amount from him. Got really fit with him. I didn't have the race I wanted, obviously. I dropped out. I didn't finish the race. I had some problems. I'm kind of still not exactly sure what happened on that race day. But something in my training wasn't quite right. My taper wasn't quite right. And race day, sometimes you just have days that don't quite materialize. I think that like on the positive side, I brought a lot of fitness from that race. Like obviously I was really fit. And like I was saying before, kind of taking that like big aerobic base and like general road fitness and stuff, and then translating that into mountain fitness. I think that went really well. Like I was obviously already pretty well, like super well acclimated to 7,000 feet, because I've been living there for a year or so in Flag. So that was a huge benefit. So I feel like I brought a lot of positive stuff from that race, in terms of just like having this big base of aerobic fitness that I could then build off with kind of the more mountain specific stuff and the altitude stuff. And honestly, like I had a lot of just like conversations, and even just like in the last few weeks, like texting and stuff with Jim, about like, how do I do this? I don't really do like really long mountain ultra stuff, and being like, how do I like stagger my caffeine for this long? Or how much fuel would you be taking? Are you going to would you just do gels? Would you do real food? Like, so I think a huge part of what I take away from my build up is just like having a great new friendship with this guy that I really like and respect. That was a huge part of it. So when I think about like what did I take from that race into the mountains with me, I think it's almost all positive. Like all the negative stuff, like, oh man, like that race didn't go the way I wanted, like 0% of me was thinking about that in the last 3 weeks. It was like all about, I'm here, I'm doing this thing that I'm really psyched about, and that's it. Like there was no part of me that was like, oh man, like this would be so much cooler if that race had gone well. Which, like, yeah, if I think about that in retrospect, obviously that's true. It would have been really cool to be like, oh, you ran this super fast road 100K and then you did this cool mountain stuff a month later. That would be a pretty cool story. But it's like, I don't think the story is any less cool because it didn't go well. If anything, I think it felt very redemptive to have such a good day in the mountains after that experience, and being really disappointed, because like that's racing. Like sometimes you just like line them all up and you have like 5 awesome performances in a row. And like, I think Hayden Hawks is someone who had an amazing 2020, and then Project Carbon X didn't go well for him either. And it's like, at some point it's going to stop happening. Like you can't have a great race every single time, even though Eliud Kipchoge has a bad race. So it's like, I think as runners, especially as pro runners, like we learn quickly to do that, to like take a bad day and like encapsulate the negativity and like learn from it and say, okay, what can I take away from this? What can I do better next time? And then find the positive, and like that's the thing that stays with you in the long term, is like what do I have that's positive to take away from this? And for me, it's like obviously the physical, the fitness, and then like the relationships I made with people in Flagstaff, I think were really, really positive, and those have stayed with me, and those people were definitely with me in the mountains.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, compartmentalization is a huge strength for any area, and I'm glad that you had that with you for sure.
For
Um,
sure.
so you're up there, you're acclimating, everything's going well. You were saying that on race day it was like you're getting ready, and then it's like there's nothing left to do but start. So if you when you're about to start, it's nice and dark. What are you thinking?
I'm mostly thinking like I just want to go. Like I was amped, honestly. Like we did start like 17 minutes late. We started like 4:17, and I think it was my own fault because like honestly, like Scott and I were just like cold and then sitting in the tent and like drinking coffee and stuff, and then we're like, oh shit, it's 3:45. We got to get ready. Um, and then there was just like, there's a lot of gear when you climb a big mountain like that. So it's like a lot of like double checking, like, oh, is everything in the truck? That we have? Like, do I have everything I need? Because the first part is just running. So it's like I'm going super light. I'm literally just in like, all I had is like a little tiny belt with like 4 gels in it and one bottle or something. So it's like that like super minimalist stuff means like, okay, everything has to be super dialed. And then, we want to have a really quick transition once we get up to where it kind of goes from run to climb. So that part, again, it's just like making sure that everything is dialed and ready to go. Um, Honestly, though, yeah, I was just like I was stoked. It was like the morning was perfect. There was absolutely no wind at the start, which is really, really nice for Atacama. That region gets super, super windy, and it wasn't that cold. Like all the stars are out. It's like the best stars I've ever seen in the Atacama Desert. So I was just like totally excited. I don't think I had already done that first run part, so like the rest of the day seemed really far away. It was like I knew I had 2 hours that were really familiar and like pretty comfortable for me. So I was just really stoked. I was like, let's just go. Let's just get this on just the show on the road, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and you had already scouted the course. You knew what to expect. You did your research, then scouted out and everything like that. Going in, what were you kind of preparing for? What did you know would be the most challenging of this?
Yeah, I think that I mean the altitude is the obvious answer. Like it was the highest I'd ever been. Like you said, we'd already gone to the summit, so we had done a whole hiking trip over like 2.5 days, like the week before, where I'd run the first piece, which is that first 20K, and then we'd actually spend the night at that really high camp at 5,200 meters, and then had hiked all the way to the summit and back, and then walked and jogged all the way back down. So we'd done the whole thing kind of piecemeal, and I had gone solo to the summit. The day that we did our scouting mission, Scott made it to about 6,500 meters, and then it was actually just really, really cold because we started too early, so it was still dark out, and we were just like freezing. And so he ended up going down. We actually both ended up going down, and then I ended up going back up. So it was almost like two summits in a day. So that was a really big day. But even that day, the very last piece, most of this climb, interestingly enough, because it's such a big mountain, is actually non-technical. It's like just hiking. Like if you can hike up a hill next to your house, you can hike up this mountain. Obviously, it's really high, but the last maybe like 200 vertical meters or so are around the edge of this crater rim, basically, and then you kind of go up into this notch and then along a really exposed rock ridge. So it's like you get up to the highest point, and then you have the most technical, complicated part of the climb. And we had walkie-talkies with us on FKT day, which is great. We had a woman, Vanessa, with us, who's a super badass climber and driver. She drove our her Toyota red pickup truck up to almost 19,000 feet, which is insane. But she had walkie-talkies. I had one walkie-talkie with me that I took all the way to the summit. And the only thing was she was like, I don't think it's going to work above the crater because like once you get to the crater, you kind of like go way back around the mountain. And so that was definitely the scariest part of the day for me, was just like getting to that point and knowing like, okay, it's the highest part of the mountain, it's the most technical part of the mountain, and I'm going to be out of radio contact. So like I actually sent this like kind of like message of like, I love you guys. I hope everything goes well. Like at the edge of the crater where I was like, all right, guys, like basically tell my parents I love them if anything happens to me up here. If you don't hear from me in like 2 hours, like send someone to come find my body, because it's like I don't like I'm not gonna have contact, and this is the scariest part of the climb. And I remember like maybe right after that, maybe it's because I'd stopped for a minute or two, but I just like had this one kind of like, it was like the only moment of like kind of semi panic I had the whole day, where like I just kind of like my heart was racing and I couldn't calm it down and couldn't get my breath under control. And it's like, you're at 22,000 feet on like a little tiny rock ledge. It's like, that's a really bad place to have that happen. And, you know, you just kind of have to take a moment and be like, okay, like center yourself, like calm yourself down, and then, just keep going. And for me, it was just about getting back into the routine of putting one foot in front of the other. And, I'd done this all before. I've been on big mountains before and dealt with problems in big mountains before. So like none of that was new to me. And it was just like reminding myself, like, this is fine. It's not supposed to feel normal. You're at 22,000 plus feet. And like you can handle this basically. And then I think once I just got into a rhythm, it was like, okay, like I'm going through this piece, I'm going through this piece, and I'm going through this pitch. And then, before you know it, you're on the summit ridge and there's one more pitch of rope left, and then you're on the top. And, once I was on the top, it was like, down climbing is always a little bit scary, but then, I think once that whole crater piece was over, it was just like, it was like a celebration, because I knew that we were going really, really fast. And I knew that once I got below the crater and was back in radio contact, that the terrain was easy enough that like even if I took a fall, like it wasn't really going to matter. Like, and I did take a bunch of falls because I'm really bad at running downhill, but like nothing bad happened at that point. It was just like fun running down the mountain, and then seeing my friends at base camp, and then running all the way back out to the highway.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting, talking about reaching the summit, and then that you refound the task, just the one foot
Yeah.
together, and it's really just that simple. And you speak to that simplicity very, very candidly and very beautifully here. And you found that flow state on the way down too. I think you're pretty good at down, by the way. But and you mentioned that the last 4K back to the Refugio, and how it just stretched, how it just goes on and on forever for that last bit of it. If you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so the very last stretch, it's like kind of brutal, because it's like the start of the route is on this like really flat open expanse of just like absolute barren desert. Like there's nothing alive there. It's just sand and rocks and dead birds. And you can see this little tiny house from way too far away, and you can see the cars there that's parked there, and you're just like, oh, it's so close, but it's not. It's like 3 miles away or something when you can start to see it, and the road is completely straight. There are no turns. There's nothing to distract you. And Scott had gotten dropped off there and hopped out and ran with me for a little bit, and that was awesome. And really, it was just like that. By that point, when I was like, oh yeah, it was really fun, I was running down the mountain, like this is the part where it's like, I was really ready for it to be done like 35-40 minutes ago. Your legs are just burning and destroyed, like you're really like fuel stores are dead, dehydration is here, like you're just like, get me to the finish line. And it's one of those things where it just feels like it's never going to come, and you really just have to like look for some little milestone on the horizon, whether it's just like a weird shaped rock or something, whatever it is, something to get you from moment to moment there. And I think that's what ultra running is about. And sometimes, like I was pretty lucky. I really only had that kind of feeling for the last, 20, 30 minutes, maybe the last hour or so, if you kind of work backwards. But like a lot of the run I felt quite good, but like sometimes in an ultra you can have that feeling for hours. And like Jim has talked to me about this a lot. It's like you get this tunnel vision effect where it's like you're just like one foot in front of the other, like just keep going, keep going. And that's what you have to do. And like that's what I was doing in that moment. It's like I did get that kind of tunnel vision where it's just like, all right, like here's the road, here's me putting one foot in front of the other. That's all that's going on right now.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. And the finish, what was that like?
It's funny, like, because like we were talking about with FKT stuff, like sometimes it's really anticlimactic, and I feel like it was a little anticlimactic. Like Scott had dropped back a little bit, so he was a couple hundred meters back, and there's actually another climbing party, weirdly, because like we hardly saw anyone. There was another climbing party at the refugio, so they were just like on the porch of this building along with Vanessa, and they're like, what's this guy doing? Like, and like they kind of like did a little clap thing as I came in because like obviously I had done something, and they were like, this is weird. Like, why is this guy running down the road in the middle of the desert? But like it was definitely like a very internal kind of celebration of like, okay, that was really big. Like that was a big, big, big day for me, for like me personally. And it's that's the beauty of the FKTs. I think sometimes is I had the same experience in Everest. Like I finished the Everest Base Camp Trail FKT in the middle of the night, in this town, and there was no one there. There was literally no one. There probably wasn't even anyone awake. It was like me and a bunch of street dogs, and it was like the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I was just like, oh, stop my watch. I'm done. Time to go back to my room.
Yeah.
So it's really different, especially like from an event like Project Carbon X, which has like so much hoopla and media and stuff, to be like, all right, I'm just like gonna lie down on the ground in the middle of the desert for a bit, and think about what I just did. you know
The world celebrated with you, so
Thanks.
um, is there anything you would have done differently?
That's a good question. Hang on one second because my phone is telling me that I only have 5 minutes of Instagram left, and so I better tell it not to do that. Well, if I get kicked off, I'll hop back in. Um, Anything that I would have done differently, I think really not sure off the top of my head. I mean, I guess like logistically, some of the transitions could have been a little bit quicker if I'd been a little bit better prepared, but like mostly it's like I mean, it was a really good day, and like when you have really good days, it's like because everything goes really smoothly. Um, I honestly don't think there's that much I would have changed. Um, Maybe I don't know. Fueling is a really tricky thing at that altitude because I don't know if you've ever been that high, but like your stomach can really just like reject food, like your appetite can really go away. And so like I went almost all gels and drink mix, which I don't usually do. I like to eat real food even if I'm running kind of fast sometimes. So like I found it pretty hard to get actual stuff down. Um, Zandy's just asking what did I end up feeling with. So I used a combination of Morton gels and goo gels, and then Morton drink mix, which was also mixed with Noon. So I'm like really mixing all my competitors here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the Noon for the electrolytes, like the Morton for the calories, and then the gels. The Morton gels and the goo gels just have a very different taste and mouthfeel, so I like to have both on hand. Um, but yeah, so that maybe that's the only thing I would try to experiment a little bit more with that stuff at high altitude is just like figuring out what goes down well because I probably didn't eat enough calories during the run and like I definitely did feel like pretty bonky in the last hour or two of the run and that part probably could have been a little bit quicker but like honestly that's we're picking at straws here like it was a really good day it's hard to make much go better than that.
Sure, sure. And then kind of along the same. Uh, so how did your equipment function along the way?
Yeah, it went super well. I ended up running because Zanny just asked this too. I ended up renting a pair of speed goats for the first piece. So I don't
Uh,
know if that's the highest.
the mid top,
Sorry,
the mid top speed goats, or
just a standard speed goat. Standard speed goat for the first 20K. No, even more. Like first 25K. I wore the speed goats up to like 19,500 feet or something, which is pretty cool. Maybe the highest the speed goat has ever been. We'll see if anyone can top that. And then I changed into the Kaha, I think it's called, the hiking boot, for the rest. And I actually debated just going speed goat all the way up, honestly, because I knew it wasn't going to be a super cold day, or even just the speed goat Gore-Tex up to the summit. And the only reason I didn't do that is because there's some pieces where you go through like some really loose, like gravelly, scree stuff on the way down, and just the lower shoe, you would just get so much gravel in your shoe. I've done that before, and it's just a pain. So the high boot with a gaiter kept that a lot better. But yeah, I mean the shoes were awesome. I mean the Speedgoat's a great shoe. Jim definitely turned me on to that. I was more of a Challenger guy. Now I'm more of a Speedgoat guy. But it held up perfectly. It was great for that terrain. The Kaha was great. I had never really used it before this trip and used it a ton. Um, and then, I'm trying to think of this other gear. Ultra Spire, they're a new sponsor of mine, had awesome lighting gear. I had a super bright waist and headlamp on, and the Bryce XT pack. It's just like a pretty small vest with a backpack function, and that's what I used for the whole climb portion. So yeah, it worked super, super well.
excellent, excellent. The stars aligned. What a performance! We're all super hyped on this part of a larger challenge. If you could speak to Los Diez, Los 10 FKT.
Yeah, definitely. So Los Diez, or the 10, Big 10, is kind of another project. This was like definitely more of my just like daydreaming about mountain stuff while I was doing road training back in the fall, and kind of thinking about the spring and knowing that there weren't going to be a ton of race options available probably. So this was really me thinking about, well, it's a combination of him.
Uh-oh. I think his timer went off. Oh no. Okay, go.
For being on Instagram for too long. Um, so yeah, Los Diez. Let's talk about Los Diez. So this actually started because I joined the editorial board of fastestknowntime.com last year, as the South American regional editor, which basically means that if you submit an FKT in South America, it goes through me. Um, and we started talking about like why there weren't more routes in South America, because like there are whole countries like Bolivia doesn't have any FKTs right now, and I know that there are people that are really badass trail runners in Ecuador, mountain runners, or excuse me, in Bolivia, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And like people keep track of this stuff. Like here in Ecuador, we have Pichincha, which is the mountain that Scott and I went up to have coffee and do work and stuff. And it's like there are tons of trails on there, and people keep track of the various ascents of that mountain on different routes and stuff. So like there is this culture of record keeping and on trails and stuff and mountains already happening. And it's just a matter of kind of like the nice thing about fastestknowntime.com is like it kind of congregates that all in one central place. It's kind of like a governing body, but not quite as strict or rigid. So Los Diez was an idea to for me to just like have a lot of fun in the spring and summer and like go do a bunch of fun stuff in the mountains with my friends, and also to really hopefully try to like take this thing that is currently like just talked about on WhatsApp and stuff, and like people just kind of like know each other's records, and trying to like take that culture and make it a little bit more organized so that people can, like we were talking about at the beginning, kind of keep like compete against each other and compete against, historical figures and stuff like that. So the idea was 10 routes in the Andes. Some of them, I think it's about half and half. Some of them already have marks. So like Ojos was the first one, and it obviously had a mark already. And then some of them are routes that are really, really popular, but are not yet, like there is either no known FKT, or at least there's nothing on the board's site right now. And I'm still trying to kind of like do the research to figure out like, hey, has anyone ever done this in one go? Like what would the record be? But the idea is, Ojos obviously I did by myself. Scott was there to support. But the idea is to hopefully try and do a lot of these with local guys. So I have a ton of connections to people in the ultra running community, the trail running community here in South America. And a ton of people have reached out to me since we published this. And so the idea is to hopefully have a lot of these be joint marks where, we'll do something together, whether it's, someone here in Ecuador like Carl Egloff, or Joaquin Lopez, really good friends of mine, or down in Bolivia, or even down in Patagonia, way down in the southern tip of South America. So it's something that I'm really, really psyched about, both because I love the FKT movement, the culture, like we talked about before, and also just because, this day for me, I think was a lot more than just like, okay, this day went really well and this record went down. It was very much like a proof of concept almost of, hey, this is something that I can get really stoked about and really psyched about. And also, I think that this is something that I can be kind of good at. And it's something that I haven't tried to do all that much before in a super competitive way. So I think this is going to give me the opportunity to really see how I stack up against some of these more competitive routes with guys who are a lot more experienced than me in the mountains. And mostly it's honestly just something that I'm really excited about. And I think that's a huge part of sport is, if you're not excited about the goals that you're chasing, then they're not going to go well and you're not going to have fun and you're not going to stick around for the long term.
Couldn't agree more, definitely. So which peak is next?
That's a really good question. So I guess we'll drop it here. I'm actually going for another route on probably on Friday of this week. We were kind of like, recovery went really well, so I just want to strike while the iron's hot. Like my acclimatization is really, really good. So we're actually my whole apartment here. We're gonna drive down to. It's about 4 hours away from here in south in Ecuador. It's a mountain called Tungurahua, and it's also another active volcano. It's a lot lower. It's only 5,100 meters. So it's at maybe 16, 17,000 feet, something like that. And yeah, it's one of Ecuador has a bunch of cinco mil, which is 5,000 meters. Maybe there's like eight, and this is one of the few that I haven't actually climbed yet. So it's a really good opportunity to climb a big mountain and hopefully get another FKT while we're down there. This is not a Carl Egloff mark, so Carl is inarguably the best big mountain high altitude runner in the world. He broke Kilian Jornet's speed records on Denali, Aconcagua, Kilimanjaro, Elbrus. So he's going after all the 7 summits. And, I kind of am like terrified of that. So like, this is not a Carl mark. I will, kind of, I love Carl. He's a good dude. And I want to do some projects with him together. And I do want to try one of his routes to just see like how close can I get? Because to me, he's the absolute gold standard of big mountain running and speed climbing. So I would love to, try his route on Cotopaxi is like unbelievable. It's a legendary mark. He has the mark on Aconcagua, which is basically the big brother of Ojos del Salado down in Argentina. That's definitely like, probably next year at this point because the climbing season is almost over, and Argentina is totally locked down. But anyways, I'm rambling. But so Tungurahua is next is definitely kind of just to test the waters, and then beyond that, the other 2 routes in Ecuador that are on the original list are the Pichincha Traverse, which is a mark that again, it was one of these marks that like a lot of people had done kind of piecemeal, and probably some people had even done the whole thing. But Anna Mae Flynn, who's a fellow Hoka runner, came down to Ecuador last January, and she and I actually were the first people to put like an actual time up. And then it was very cool that it actually got broken by another couple, not that we were a couple, but like another pair, excuse me. Where it was an Ecuadorian guy and his training climbing partner, and they so it's like a still mixed gender team, which I thought was super cool. But that mark can definitely go way, way, way down. So I'm gonna that's probably, as soon as we get a good weather day up in the mountains, I'm gonna try and rip that one pretty good. And the other one is called the Kilatoa Traverse. Kilatoa is this really beautiful crater lake, um, crazy turquoise colored lake out in the middle of the Andes here in Ecuador, maybe 3 or 4 hours from Quito. And a lot of people do this hike. It's really, really popular trekking route, maybe like 3 or 4 day trekking route. It's about 50 kilometers, 30 miles. And my friend Matt and I did about 2/3 of it last year as just a fun run. And it's just one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. So that's one that doesn't have a route yet. So I'm definitely looking to do that with some of my Ecuadorian running friends and just put a time up and, set it out there as something that people can go for. So for now, sticking local, COVID, try not to travel much. Ojos was obviously big travel, but now we'll just be in Ecuador and trying to do as many cool routes in Ecuador that we can do driving. And then, looking beyond that, it probably won't be till the summer, like northern summer. June, July, August is the best weather season in the Andes, in the kind of south central Andes, like Peru and Bolivia. So depending on what travel restrictions look like, that's probably when those bigger marks will happen. And then for the really far south stuff like Patagonia and Tierra del Fuego, that's probably going to have to wait till December at this point, because it's already, the climbing season's already pretty much done down there.
Right, right. And yeah, probably by then too, I would imagine that travel is going to be a little bit easier down there too. So that'll be another benefit there. So yeah. Well, thank you again so much. Is there anything I haven't covered that you wanted to get in here?
No, man, it's been awesome. It's been super, super fun to talk about all this. I see Rosie Montañista is saying that I need to go for the Aconcagua mark. I'm coming next year, 2022, baby. We're gonna do it. If I could do it this year, I would, but I just don't think it's possible because Aconcagua season is almost over, and Argentina, as far as I know, is really, really strict lockdown. I would love to strike while the iron's hot and just hop down there and spend another 3 weeks acclimating and scoping the route and getting Aconcaguas, or at least giving it a run for its money. It's a Killian Jornet Carl Egloff mark, so that one's legit. But I'm there as soon as the opportunity presents itself, and I think having another year's experience will be awesome.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we're all so excited again for what you've done, what you're about to do. It's great seeing you be so generous with sharing like the pictures and everything. We all can't wait to see more of that and to hear about more of these adventures, man. We're so hyped on it.
Oh, thanks. I'm hyped too. I think that's the most exciting piece. It's just like, yeah, having projects that you're excited about, whether it's a race or like something like this where you just kind of have to put your own stuff together. It's been that kind of year, and I think this is a project that it's been something I've been kind of obsessing over for months and months and months now, and it's very exciting to like be in the thick of it now. It's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And then if I could just tease one little thing. So like, it's all mountains, that's the headlines right now. Are you giving any road stuff like beyond it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I still consider myself a road runner that's just like messing around for a while, while there's not much road stuff to do. I am very interested in making the 50K Worlds team, which is in the late fall, and I think that race hopefully will still happen. Which would mean maybe running 50K USATF Nationals, which is in June, or setting up some kind of time trial or road event before then. But something like that. I mean, 50K, 50 miles is still a distance that I really, really like on the road. I haven't had a good 100K yet, but I love 50K. I love 50 miles. Excuse me. So I think doing something like that in the late spring would be great. I think it'd be great to do this mountain stuff, mess around for another month or so, and then focus a little bit more on the road stuff. But it's just going to depend on what's available, honestly, and figuring out what we can do. But yeah, I'm definitely not done with roads. I've got my Carbon X's here. I've got my Rocket X's here. So I even brought a pair of spikes. Like we're I'm looking forward to getting fast. I have a really good group of guys that I train with down here. So yeah, they drag me around the track. They get me into shape real quick, at least fast shape.
Beautiful. Great to hear it. Well, again, thank you so much, Ty. This was a blast. Thanks again for asking. Thank you to everybody at Chaski, Hoka, everyone like that. I don't know if you want to shout out your sponsors.
Yeah, I mean, Chaski Endurance Collective, Hoka One One, my shoe sponsor, Ultra Spire, like I said, Noon, they've been with me forever. Morton, Honey Stinger, Goo, all those guys have supported me at some point or another. Yeah, every single one of those brands was critical in this happening, so it was awesome. And I do want to give a huge shout out to Scott and Vanessa, my crew, and Poncho. Really, really, like, could not have done this one without them. Would have been a completely different experience to go unsupported. So yeah, having them there as, literal support and just like mental, physical support, it was amazing. They're the best. And Scott spent 3 weeks basically living in a tent with me in the middle of the desert, so he definitely gets a special shout out. But yeah, it's a very much an individual sport, but it's also very much, we're supported by the people that are around us, whether that's literally out there or, the people who are in our lives and helping us, get through everything. So very, very grateful to everyone in my life who helped me get to this point.
Absolutely. Well, we're so proud of you again. Congratulations. And yeah, can't wait to see what you do next, man.
Awesome. Thanks, man. All right. Thanks everybody for being here. Have a good night, everyone.
All right. Take care.
Bye.